while we're griping, I'm going to gripe about these fucking dice. They're just hideous to me. They look like they belong in a Monopoly game or something like that. Obviously, I'm not going to use them. I'll probably end up pulling out favored dice, the nice little rounded ones that I really like. And I think this game kind of deserves them. It's weird because I don't have like high expectations for the game, but somehow the graphics remind me of AWE games, and I want those little rounded dice for them. I don't know. Yeah, I think I've gotten through most of my the east just goes glowing. Including my table. It's not just the board that's, you know, creating this. It's something on the camera. I think this is the vast majority of the setup is in play. I find it a little odd. So I'm guessing, although nothing is indicated here, that there's some sort of, so there's this table here that's meant to hold the miners. Naples and Portugal are set up with, and Hanover are set up with the British. There are a ton of counters for all the different nationalities here. Some kind of arrangement of the diplomacy, etc. there. I don't recall how those all operate, etc., but I'm assuming that they should be set up at this point. They're not. Or at least they're not included in the setup rules. I think as we inch our way through the actual rules reading, and yeah, this is going to be a painful one to read because, again, it's not real familiar to me. It's been a lot longer than I counted on. Let's just put it that way. Stellar Horizons 2 was a much, much bigger game than I thought it was. And I should have known, because the first one was a big game too. And it was a lot of turns, and by the time I was reading these rules, I think I was pretty aware that, like, it was going to, you know, it was taking me a long time to play. I was coming up and doing like one phase each video section. But we shall see. We shall see what we can find out about this one. I'm also, I have other questions. For example, the game is written as a two-player game in the base rulebook. And then the playbook, or whatever it is, yeah, it's actually called a playbook, covers the multiplayer scenarios, or the multiplayer rules. This seems to be a multiplayer game, but I'm not positive of that. Like, this scenario may actually be a two-player scenario. There's nothing that really indicates one way or the other, at least here. And I have some worries about that, because there's like nothing that indicates that like the little introductory scenarios are well, this one only has 2 powers. That'll help, and I'm sure Marengo only has 2. But when we get to the shorter scenarios, etc., it feels odd, but I don't know. Again, I think this is a multiplayer scenario. Everybody's got their own money. I put their victory point markers out there as well with that assumption underhand. So it actually says that specific nations are holding specific cards. So I've got those specific cards actually dealt out to those nations. But some of the nations start neutral, which is not problematic, but there also doesn't seem to be a clear mechanism in place. Like if I look at victory conditions, and maybe I'm, missing something here, right? Well, there aren't any. No, here they are. Here they are. I saw something that looked like victory conditions. Maybe I'm wrong. There we France wins an automatic victory if at the end of any turn she has conquered Austria, Prussia, and Britain. Or France wins at the end of the last turn if she controls every fortress, blah, blah, blah. The coalition wins if this. Now, if I look at the campaign scenario, I don't think it has victory conditions because it follows, oh, here we go. Consult the rule book for how to win a grand campaign. Shorter scenario, France wins if Austria is conquered. That's if you want to winter 1805. It's a less than a year to do the Austerlitz scenario on its own. I honestly don't know if this is going to hold multiple players because it doesn't refer to the grand campaign victory conditions, and it says the coalition wins an automatic victory, the coalition wins if at the end. I feel like it's a two-player scenario, and that the only scenarios that are not are the grand campaign scenarios, which are the ones that end in 1815, essentially. Yeah. And I don't know. I find that kind of disappointing in a way, although there would have to be a lot of rules to handle allowing the nations to have full diplomatic kind of control, to allow the players to have full diplomatic control over their nations in that revolutionary period, because there really is a fear of, what's going on in France right now. But later on, it kind of feels like a two-player situation as well. I've got to say, with the exception of Turkey and Spain, no one is really siding with Napoleonic France. Yeah, you can make arguments that Austria and Prussia were, but that's more a matter of peace conditions than anything else, and it was kind of enforced on them, and even Russia to some extent. But there may just not be as much diplomacy available in the revolutionary scenario. And it takes me to here, and then there's like, nothing happens in 1798, although some leaders show up then, I think. Well, I don't know. 1799 is the second coalition short scenario. And then these are, just weird little slices that they don't start the grand campaign at for some reason. And then the intro scenarios, Marengo's 1800, and Napoleon in Italy might be 98, might be. No, it's 96. And however, it only lasts through 96. So yeah, I don't know why there's any distinguishment about 98 having, first of all, I don't know if it should even have a box, but okay. Beyond that, I think there are counters that come in 98, which is weird. Because all the people, so the 1805 is like this watershed year where all these leaders come in. So it's not like, some people were promoted or would have been available at some other date. That's another problem with trying, even if I tried to homebrew something that allowed me to run an entire campaign running from 92 to 15, I would have to do some additional work beyond just thinking about the game, because there's basically a period from 1800 to 1804 where no new leaders appear and none are really available and none disappear or anything like that. But yeah. But for some reason, I think there are counters for 1798. These are 96. Maybe I'm wrong. Here we go. 98 to 07. A whole pile of Russians for 98. And there's no scenario that uses that. So it's not even consistent with itself, but I wish some kind of effort had been made to include the leaders who would have been available in that interim period, and to allow for some kind of I don't know. It would be really hard for me to make a transition for that, which is really sad, because that is what I was most interested in here. I already have the revolutionary scenario for Empires in Arms and was disappointed to find that didn't cover the interim either. Anyway, let me send this up, get back to playing some Raid, and we'll get to the rules at some point. I don't know what, personal issues, right? Get to the rule book itself when they try to represent the different units. This feels like a mess, okay? It's really hard to follow these lines. They're pushing way off to places so that they don't put, you know, so that they don't fill in on both sides or whatever. You know, the layout overall isn't that bad, but the layout when it comes to anything involving the graphics, again, it's as if Compass has like this desire to make the game as unplayable as possible. And this isn't the only game in which this is the case by any means, but that they aim to make their games as unplayable as possible by making the graphics as difficult to discern. Not just, you know, it's not just that they're hard to see on the counters. And EU has its own problems with that. So I don't want to hold it up as some kind of exemplar, because they have let the numbers roam too close to the counter edges, so that the automated cutting cuts off some numbers that you need, or parts of them, and then if you're stupid like me and you clip your counters, it gets even worse. But to the extent that, like, whoever's trying to explain the graphics, when they do it in the rule book itself, they actually seem to go out of their way to make that hard to cope with as well. Into another issue, I started working on the neutrals. Now, neutrals are problematic because if you throw in a lot of neutral countries, and this happens in EU as well, it's kind of hard to distinguish, you know, the nationality of stuff. Now, there is this tiny little flag section. So here, this is apparently the Portuguese flag representation, and we got it represented here. And that distinguishes it as different from something that's almost the same color. This is Dutch. It's kind of painful to me to see that kind of limited distinguishment. I feel like the color palette that was used in EU was broader than what I'm seeing here. Or maybe it's the fact that, like, the flag has more prominence. You know, with the number and whatnot on here, it is kind of painful. This is the only detachment that the Portuguese have, yet they put a number on it. It's just, again, the graphics decisions made, as with, oh, and now I've got the glow back. The graphics decision that's been made is just not, in general, is just really subpar. I do understand the problem with the colorations issue, but it feels like nothing was really done to resolve that problem, or very little was done to resolve it. Anyway, I'll keep working my way through. This is the second printing of this game. They make a big deal about that. I don't know if they make a big deal about it in the... Yeah, they put it here too, where they said they corrected a bunch of mistakes. It's not a second edition, it's not major reworking of any kind, but it is the second printing, and they actually say, look, we corrected a lot of the mistakes. That was one of the reasons I picked this up, was I figured, okay, you know, if it was like an Armada style problem where there were a lot of typos and whatnot, at least that would be fixed. But obviously they didn't worry too much about it. I catch here, Prince Württemberg comes with 1 times 0 what? Who knows what that is? Wow, no glare coming there. Now I'm not getting the glare at all. Now the camera's working just fine. Okay, let me know if there's a significant difference in the view. And then 1x0 cav core. Well, I'm assuming they meant to put infantry in there. But you know, I mean, I don't know if people went back and hit the second edition and tried to get errata for it, but you would assume any important errata was put into place in this second printing. That's certainly what they bragged about. The map doesn't necessarily match with the instructions. So for example, they use Bruxelles here, 2823, so there's not going to be any issue. But on the map, they write it as Brussels. Picky? Yeah. I mean, if I weren't doing this video, I wouldn't point out shit like that at all. But it is kind of obnoxious. It's like, come on. Can't you get your scenario instructions to match the graphics that you provide? I don't know. This is screwed up though, because there are only 2 cuirassiers, I think, unless I screwed something up, on the Austrians' force pool. One is +1, one is +0. Now sometimes the other side shows differently, but it doesn't. It shows a +1. I'll put this one in, but again, it does not fit the setup instructions. So I feel like there's probably a lot of errors in the setup instructions. The only place I could find this, Inf-C Infantry Corps, Res-C Reserve Corps, should be referred to differently. I had to look this up because CRC is Cuirassier Cavalry Corps, because I saw something I wasn't used to, which is reduced CRC. And a train. For finishing the French setup, making shit up as needed and trying to guesstimate what the rules best mean, I've come up against another problem, which is here, Clarfet has 1x +1 infantry corps. Now, the only actual infantry corps that the Austrians have are 0 modifier. And that +1, I don't think it was explained in the setup instructions. It might be explained somewhere else that this is how they designate it. But look, I've had this kind of issue with games that I really love, like the Gamers series, where I have to kind of puzzle out what their notation for how to set something up is. And I'm pretty sure that I've got this right. For example, here they have 1x0 infantry corps, 1x +1 cavalry corps, and these units do have a modifier on them, but none of the Austrian infantry has a +1. What does, though, is Austrian reserve, which I guess is infantry, and I guess I will use as such. You'd think they would say reserve if that's what they meant. But there's other things that do, like Grenadiers have a +2. These are cav. And again, you have to kind of paw through the pool to try to find these things. It's not clear to me that this should be treated as infantry. Again, maybe somewhere over here, because didn't see it here. They make this distinction of what, you know, what is infantry and what is not. Not really. So like, Cav have a little symbol on them though, this little Y symbol here. Because why are they there? So I'm just kind of guessing, what do we got here? So when they specify militia, which you would also think are a kind of infantry, right? They put it down as 1x -1 militia corps, okay? And if you're supposed to use the reserve corps, just fucking tell me that. Don't tell me infantry. This is Nation at Arms. And yes, I've heard horror stories about it. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of glow. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. It's weird. I don't really care if it's just my screen. Anyway, I'm chronicling my setup woes on this one. I've done this for a few games. This game has horror stories about it, and it seems to deserve them. It's by the same designer as did Napoleon Against Europe, which I covered a while back. And, you know, I didn't enjoy that. I was staying away from this one because it really did have, you know, it was considered an even worse version in many ways. But then I went to Consim World and was convinced into giving it a try, not playing it there. I looked at it, it looked interesting, and yeah, I made my decision to buy it. But anyway, what is the setup was? Look, the first thing, the first instance I ran across has to do with Compass's constant problem, which is components. They have, I don't know what they do. It's like, you know, it's one thing to kind of be innovative and cutesy about your components and stuff, and sometimes they try to do that and it just fails horribly. They make them unreadable, etc. But they seem to just go out of their way. Now, this is an older game, but they seem to just go out of their way continuously, like they have no eye for what is a usable component. Let me indicate this for now, what this first issue is, which I came across when I started sorting the counters. First of all, many of the counters don't have a nationality on them. The miners, they don't have any nationality. They go by color, but the colors are not absolutely clear. They got a flag on them, but it's pretty iffy. When you go to the major nationalities, look, you can figure that out, right? But, yeah, so for example, you'll have like a green counter says Russia. So you know this color is Russia, unless it's dark green that's over there, which is something different or something. But, well, one thing they did was they made Austria kind of this brownish color, which feels awfully weird to me. To me, Austria should be white, but okay, I'll live. I'll live on that side. Wait a minute. This will be Prussia. What is this color? Oh, Jesus. Let's see, we have, is this actually Austria? No, this is Spain. Spain is this brownish color. Austria is this kind of gray color, I think. Which is just, again, it's weird. It doesn't fit conventions. It doesn't fit their uniform colors. They didn't want to mix it up with the white that they're using for the counters. But yeah, it doesn't feel right to me in some sort of way. But anyway. Leave that at be, put it aside. That's just a color choice which might work okay. But what doesn't work okay is each counter has, see now, this got clear, but this has the glow, has the years that they exist in. And first of all, it has multiple different colors. I think the white counters, so I think the red counters are for revolutionary scenarios only. The white stripe is for expanding from the sort of pre-campaign scenarios into the campaign, into sort of the more traditional, which coalition is it? Sixth coalition? I don't know. No, third coalition. after or right before Austerlitz, the 1805 campaign. Anything that comes in the 1805 campaign and later, though, uses this dark blue. Now, I gotta tell you, I can't read shit on these. If I zoom in with the camera, I can read them. But even when my eyes were good, I would not have been able to make those suckers out. I feel like I need like a magnifying glass and a light, or I need to zoom the camera in, and with the view screen that I'm getting now, that's not working terribly well. Nobody has responded. So people have responded to me about like the glow that I'm getting, this weird, you know, shit that's like, one person has, with something like, yeah, it might be the light coming from a tree out there. No, it's not. It's nighttime out there. It's something wrong with the camera, but nobody has responded that like the view is fucked up. And I don't know. It doesn't look it, but I don't end up watching my videos. But let me know if it's fucked up, because then I need a new camera. But anyway, maybe I should watch one of my videos and see if it's showing up, because it's really horrible. Like, it's really horrible. It's not just like a little bit of glare or something. It's like this fuzzy pixelization, glittering stuff happening. And I'm hoping it's just my view screen, because I think someone would say something if it was worse than that, but God knows anymore. I know most of you just sleep to this if you watch it at all. But yeah, that's one of the things, is sorting these. You have to be able to sort them by date, because those guys go into the force pool at a particular date. And some of the numbers are just impossible to read on that blue background. The red and the white background, look, the red's a little difficult for me, but that's my eyes. I can shift my thing. But the blue background on there, there's just nothing you can do to make it visible. And somebody must have noticed if this was play tested. God knows if it was. I mean, it's so bad it must not have been, is my feeling. But yeah, we got a list of playtesters here, including Didier Roy, who I've had my encounter with, but also enjoy his games. We do not have a developer, which is, of course, a really common thing for Compass games, it feels like. Like, they don't credit a developer. I think they don't, like, budget or arrange for one at all, which is a pretty damn good sign of why many of their games are just really shit quality. I really don't understand how they got away with making some decent games under those conditions. Like, there was a string of games, Balance of Power, for example, the World War I one, where there was, I don't know, I almost feel like I should look to see if there was a developer. But yeah, many of their games have been so problematic, and they had kind of a peak good point. Okay, that's one side of it. Another is, I'm looking for this guy, Rossignol. I can't find him. I'm going to end up using Valence in his place, because Valence doesn't show up here. It's not in the errata. It might be errata. It might not. It probably doesn't really matter too much. He is not a naval leader, but the problem is, to find these leaders, I had to paw through all these stacks, because I can't be sure I got the numbers right. Of the dates, etc. So this was kind of a, but I had them right. At least, the only place where I'm not sure I have them right is on those dark blue counters. I really can't tell you. Like, I see an 1805, a 3, well, there are no 3s, or an 1808. Those might get blurred together. Anyway, on top of that, the first thing that I was gonna play the absolute introductory scenario, because it's been a little while since I read the rules. However long I've been pretty much playing Stellar Horizons 2. And there's two introductory scenarios. They don't overlap with other scenarios, which I find weird. But one of the reasons I picked this game up was I thought, hey, it's called Valmy to Waterloo, the Wars of Napoleon Bonaparte, 1792 to 1850. It's not absolutely wrong, but it doesn't cover the whole period. It covers there's a campaign scenario from 1792 to 97. And then the other campaign scenarios start in 1805 or later and go to the end of the Common Wars. This is a similar solution, and there's reasons for it. I understand that, but I was hoping for a game that glued that together. What's really weird here, at least I thought it was at first, is there are cards in the Revolutionary period that come in after the Revolutionary scenario is over. Well, they might have a purpose, and I'll touch that in a moment. But anyway, why couldn't I play Marengo, right? Or why couldn't I play the next introductory scenario, which was the Napoleon in Europe, Bonaparte in Italy scenario? Here's why. They don't give the opening dates for the leaders. So, for example, if I see Sebaldendorf, right, I have no idea which pile to look for him in. Now, if I'm playing the Grand Campaign, the Revolutionary Campaign, it's fine, because I start with the 1792 counters. That's perfectly okay. I don't have to sort through, I don't have to paw through all the counters looking for this guy. If I play the 1805 campaign, it's also okay, because I only worry about the white counters and the 1805 blue counters, and they should be there. But if I want to play the Marengo scenario, I have to look through every French leader who has come in, or every stack of leaders who have come in during the Revolutionary period, and try to find these leaders. And I don't know what year they come in. It should be noted on these introductory scenarios. It should also be noted on the later scenarios. I don't worry about the 1805, but 1809, again, I'm limited to the white counters and the 1805 through 1809 counters, but that's most of the leaders in the game, to be honest. Well, it allows me to at least take away all the red marked counters. But for the 1800 and 1804 campaign, is it? I don't remember. I think it's 1804 for the Napoleon in Italy, isn't it? No, 1796 for the Napoleon in Italy, which I actually could have done. I could have done that, but I've started to set this up. Part of the reason is this is overlapped by the Revolutionary campaign, so you know, the hell with that. But yeah, I'm in a position where I have already spent a great deal of time looking for a leader. I don't know, maybe I dropped him. But it's awfully odd that there's this leader who isn't being used, who's in the force pool, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, he's going to do it. There's some other weird things which they use named leaders for some stuff, but not for others. So like they'll say something like grabs X number of leaders, and then you just put them in a pool. Now, the picking of pools is also weird in this. They make this really, really odd. For all entries with number of leaders, choose, underlined, the appropriate number of leaders from the leader pool of that power to set up. Now, choose indicates some level of decision making there. It is odd because elsewhere they use this, players can freely, so if you want to grab infantry corps or whatever, players can freely choose from the force pool any units that match that criteria. So if it just says an infantry corps, you can use any infantry corps you like, and you just pick which one. Okay. But here, the fact that they underlined it makes me feel like it's different from what they said before. My tendency would be, when you talk about what they say here is, then create a leader pool for each power. My tendency, if they had said a leader pool, would be to draw, but you'd think they would say that. So I'm assuming you get to pick which leaders you have, which doesn't feel, you know, too much like a pool anymore, but anyway. We are going, yeah, and then such leaders must be non-cavalry unless information indicates number of cavalry leaders, in which case only cavalry leaders may be chosen. Leaders chosen may not be of superior rank. Yeah, you know, I think you are supposed to actually indicate, you know, utilize your own discretion as to which leaders you want to use. That makes it harder to set up on a first play. I'm particularly worried about the fact that I'm starting the game with all my top-ranked, my best corps in the game, but those best corps don't count. They don't have a bonus in the revolutionary scenario, so that's kind of weird. Okay, so to the other thing that was weird, after we, or another thing that was weird that I hit upon, is after we hit the introductory scenarios, we hit the coalition scenario, then we hit something else, which is kind of intriguing and explains why there's cards for like 1799, which wouldn't fit in either of the campaigns. And I'm just giving you this shit because I'm having me problems. When we go to the short scenarios, there's a 1799 second coalition scenario. Now, why is this not able to be flowed right into from the 1797? I don't know. I feel like a very small amount of effort could have been added to this game to make it actually run the 1792 to 1815. I understand that there are problems. There are realignments. You know, Spain ends up, you know, going from the coalition to being more pro-French in a lot of, well, absolutely pro-French, and stuff like that. But I feel like with the use of event cards, which appear to be fairly scripted in this game, yeah, to the extent that, like, I don't know. we'll talk about that later when we get to them. But yeah, I'm having a real pain in the ass. I had a serious problem with sorting these. I went and looked through the neutral leaders to make sure that this guy that I'm looking for, whoever the fuck he is, something like Rousselet or something, Rossignol, actually, you know, isn't in there. I'm assuming it won't be that big a deal to put Valence in there. He's not an important person. He's probably another 1-star. The one worry I had was he might be a Navy leader. And I have this Rousselet, who comes in 92 as well, which is the closest name to Rossignol. But again, they gave an errata here, which lists some really, like, yeah, I think I could get those. You know, like Clenau is actually Clenau. They, you know, made some minor typos on these. Now, the dates for Bagovot is actually somewhat important, because if you're playing like the 1809 campaign, you would not have him. And he should be available for it. So that's kind of the thing. This shows their historical deaths, but they don't actually die and disappear. Now, this is one of the factors that would be important in trying to play a 1792 to 1815 scenario, that isn't available, which is some of these leaders died for reasons that had nothing to do, like they didn't die on the battlefield or something. Some of them were very old. Some of them were politically no longer acceptable. So there is a significant difference, as well as like some of the political realignments between the nations. There was also a significant difference in terms of what happens with especially the French leaders in terms of falling out of favor in the post-revolutionary era. And, you know, I mean, there was a marshal who basically never had a command again, but he was retained as a marshal by Napoleon. Stuff like that. The other thing that would be missing from this, which is really, really intriguing, is the Egyptian campaign. I would love to see a game that actually reflects that, and the reasons and the means and whatever for it. It seems like such an absolutely idiotic thing, although honestly, in a game of Empires and Arms, I know that a French player was considering, might have been me, was considering a crusade essentially. Going against the Turks like that. But in general, the Turks are your natural ally as the French. The whole idea of a campaign in Egypt just feels absolutely stupid. And the only way it makes any sense is the threat to India. And yeah, it's going to be really hard because it's just such a stretch for France to manage to do it. It's kind of amazing that they slipped their navy in to begin with, and then it gets defeated anyway, and Napoleon loses his army. But anyway, yeah, I'm giving you the start of why I'm doing a full campaign when I feel like I really should be doing the initial stuff. That's simply the damn way this game is set up. And yeah, the rules are not good either. I remember being troubled by them as I read them, and I'm not looking forward to that. Should have just gone with War and Peace since I read those rules a couple of years ago. And largely remember them, although I never have learned how to play that effectively. I'm hoping this, which has a similar sort of, a hex-based, more operational feel to the combat than like some of the other Napoleonics that I've played. Certainly the Empires in Arms and the... I don't remember about the Napoleon against Europe. But this one looked exciting to me, and I was kind of sold on it by the guy who convinced me about it. Sat down and played La Grande Guerre. There were 3 of us that played it, and I think we maybe pulled a 4th person who didn't know the rules at all. And we played a little bit of it, and decided we weren't going to get through it in a week. So, and had seen enough, and some real mistakes had been made. So it seemed like a good idea to stop. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to this, I fear.